what can we expect in these series of videos?
Super. Thank you, Rob. Well, I think probably important to just start. I mean, the securities lending for institutional investors now is a far bigger product and a more important product than probably it's ever been. And alongside that, I'd also add that I think beneficial owners are far more knowledgeable and informed about the product. It generates $10 billion of revenues for them globally. But a lot has happened, especially in the last decade or so since the credit crisis, that have just changed the way in which institutional investors engage with securities lending. It's taken it to several levels up. Yes, they are far more knowledgeable and informed, as I said, but they're also more demanding and watchful of their service providers because they're required to be by either by regulators or in particular by developments such as stewardship codes, which expect that increased level of monitoring and oversight of service providers such as securities lending agents. And they themselves have greater expectations on them too, as I said. I mean, whether it's the stewardship codes or whether it is regulations like SFTR or shareholder rights directives, etc., there's a far greater engagement around that. So it's a topic that beneficial owners have become far more engaged with than they ever did before, and now just feel like a really good time to start to look at some of the issues, some of the topics, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities around securities lending, but look at them specifically from an institutional investor perspective. And I think that's what we're providing interesting and informative and hopefully some entertaining content from that perspective is essentially our goal here.
Great, thanks for that. What do you think has been the key market developments and trends that we've seen during this period of rather fluctuating market conditions since March?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think COVID and the whole situation this year probably hasn't specifically itself been the catalyst for changes of things. I'd probably put it a little bit just 6 to 12 months prior to that, which was we saw in 2019 that explosion of investment into ESG. It suddenly went up several levels than had previously been there. So, I mean, I think that's one of the important things to talk about here is that the topics of securities lending program management, governance, compatibility with corporate governance and stewardship type principles, the growth of data and how that's revolutionized the way all types of organizations do their business. These aren't new things. These didn't necessarily happen with COVID, but I think this year has brought a bit of a catalyst to a few of these things. And I said, in particular, that ESG discussion, with so much more money going into ESG strategies, what you're seeing now is probably a brighter spotlight has been shone on some of those topics. And we've seen that this year or in the last year or so with some of the mixed messages around securities lending and its association with things like short selling. You've had some very positive announcements, and all the academic research would point towards it being a very positive contributor to market liquidity and efficiency. And yet on the other side, you've seen one of the world's biggest pension fund announcing that they were scaling back their activity. And you also saw, the German regulator in relation to Wirecard making some quite, scathing comments around short selling, and you saw short selling bans when COVID came out. So, from a beneficial owner's perspective, there's a lot of mixed messages out there, and I think one of the things that we want to kind of use this podcast for is a forum for just having a very open, hopefully objective conversation. Our job isn't to persuade people to do securities lending, but I think I see our job as bringing a lot of those topics and issues to a forum where we can just have a very open and hopefully factual conversation, share some good information, bring in, as you said earlier, some great guests from either from regulators or from asset managers and asset owners themselves, or other relevant guests that can just share a perspective onto these topics and hopefully leave people a little bit more aware and informed on these things to take back into their own organizations.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think What the viewers can expect over the coming months is hopefully great content discussed from the perspective of the institutional investors, the beneficial owners specifically. It will be very much a conversational style. We're not here to just talk about IHS market. This is to talk about general themes with people who are practitioners in the market. So hopefully you'll find that very interesting. Each podcast that we're going to be producing will only last 10 to 15 minutes, so you can grab a cup of coffee, sit down and watch the video, hopefully, and get some interest, so it won't impute too much on your busy days. We'll look to educate and inform, and hopefully in some way entertain. There'll be practical advice, you'll be getting facts, and it'll all be from differing and hopefully surprising perspectives. Universally, we'll be looking at addressing all regions. So this won't be specific to Europe. We'll be having vodcasts that will be hosted by our colleagues in the Americas and also in the APAC region as well. So hopefully you'll get a global view and probably understand that some of the themes and topics that we'll be talking about are things that we see generically across the world. So you'll see those as well. We'll be looking for you to draw your own conclusions from this. We're not looking to steer you in any way or at all. We're looking for you, the viewer, to draw your own conclusions and have your own perspectives on this. And hopefully share that with us and our guests that come along. And at the end of this podcast, you'll see some details of how you can contact us to provide us any suggestions for future podcasts. We can tell you that the next podcast will be on ESG and stewardship policies and how that can affect securities lending. I'm delighted to inform you all that I'll be joined by Paul Clark, who's a member of the stewardship team at UBS Global Asset Management. These podcasts will occur every 2 weeks, so we look forward to very much seeing you on a regular basis. I'm just going to say goodbye for now. Thanks again, Oliver, for giving us that view of what we can expect and some of the themes that we've seen so far this year. So thanks very much and see you soon.
Thank you.